Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to our next installment of the Microsft webinar series. I'm extremely excited to have you all here today. Apologies just for the little late start here, but oh yeah, we're going to have a good time. My name is Eric Overfield. I am CIO, Chief Innovation Officer here at Microsft, Microsoft MVP, Microsoft Regional Director, all around having a great time. And I'm just excited to be able to host this today for Jed, who I'll be introducing shortly, who's going to talk all about this. So here's the thing, is like Copilot, we know is just all the rage. And everyone's been asking us about how to use it. What's the right way to use it within the organization? In particular, Copilot for Microsoft 365. Like the general question is, oh, is it easy to turn on? Is it something like, oh, you might just use ChatGPT and just go use it? Like, no. Hold your horses here. You will want to curate your castle here to get the most value from Copilot. That's why we're here. Next slide, please. All right, yes. Before we get started, though, so I do want to take a moment to introduce your host for today, Microsft. So what we are, just so you know who we are in case you're new to us, is we're a team of Canada and US-based Microsoft 365 implementation experts. And here's the thing, is that we're really enthusiastic. What we really care about is helping our clients achieve their ideal employee experience. The way that we do this, the way that we help our clients is by leveraging this Microsoft technologies. In particular, it's around Microsoft 365 and modern work. It's all about the Power Platform, huge and whatnot. It's about Azure. It's about now a lot of how can we take generative AI and Copilot and help create a better digital workspace for our clients. If you're interested in learning more, though, pretty easy. You can email us at sales@creospark.com. You can get us at creospark.com. You can find us at lots of conferences as well. If we're not sponsoring, we're speaking there. In particular, hey, so next week, the Microsoft 365 conference, if you're listening to us live, is going to be in Orlando, Florida, and myself and one of my partners here, Rez, we're going to be doing a whole day workshop on SharePoint Premium on Friday. It's going to be excellent. If you're there, we hope you join us. But if you also want to talk to us, yeah, please find us. All right, next slide, please. We're going to have some housekeeping here. It's going to come up here in just a second, hopefully.
You're not seeing it?
There we go. Just saw it. Yes, excellent. Okay, so generally, if you got questions for us, oh, you went too far. No problem. Just a little bit of slide. Yes. So if you got questions, no problem. Please ask them. There's a Q&A panel that you should be able to find. Ask those questions. Here's our thought, is as you ask those questions, if I can interrupt Jed, I will. If I can't, I will be answering them, or someone else on our team will be helping answer to get you those answers right here. That's why you're here live, by the way, because we do record this and we do make this available next week or in the near future for you. But if you're here live, like, we want to get those questions that we know you have answered now. Otherwise, it could take a little more time, and it's not going to help you as much. There's a handout that we'll be providing. That's going to be in the document panel at the end. I talked about the recording again. That's going to happen next week at the earliest. We do like to get it out. We want to make sure it's available for you. You may want to share this, no problem. But there's a value for being here live that we want to provide, and that's all about the questions. There's also a quick little survey at the end as well. We would love your feedback. These webinars are for you. They're for us to be able to help you get a lot of those questions answered. And so your survey answer is going to help us make this even better. So lastly, before I do hand this off, let's go ahead and introduce our great speaker, Jed. There we go, Jed Cawthorn. Okay, so he's our modern work practice lead. I've had a pleasure of working with Jed for a while now, and oh yeah, he's good. He knows his stuff. He's an information management expert. He's an AIM fellow, which he just went to the AIM conference about a month or two ago, and the feedback he brought, or what he brought back to us, was outstanding, helping our clients from while he was there even. It's super cool. Digital workspace architect, SharePoint specialist, been working with SharePoint, I think longer than me, or as long as I have. He's one of our primary M365 consultants as well. And we're soon to find out a history enthusiast as well. So Jed, please go ahead and take it away.
Why, thank you.
There we go.
Dun, dun, dun. Thank you, Sir Eric. Oh, in fact, seeing as you're both an MVP and a regional director, I'm reckoning that makes you an earl or a duke. So In
I
all
will take it.
in all future meetings, I shall just refer to you as my lord.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
When our wonderful marketing team that does all the work to set up these webinars says, "Hey Jed, the theme is a castle. You're all in on this, right?" It's rude to not get dressed up for them. However, I am not doing the whole webinar with this on my head. It weighs quite a bit. Oh, so we have a theme, as you may have noticed. However, although I am both a technology geek and a history nerd, what we are here today to discuss in the context of a historical theme is AI, artificial intelligence. And so Eric mentioned going to the AIM conference, and while I was there, I got to speak to a good old friend of mine, Alan, founder and principal analyst of deepanalysis.net, and a guy who was a little bit ahead of his time, co-authoring a book on artificial intelligence that came out a couple of years ago, specifically on its enterprise use. And so we were talking, and we've been talking since on various channels. And he said to me, "Well, do you know what, Jed?" And by the way, he sounds well, not exactly like me, but pretty much like me, as we're both Yorkshiremen. And he said, "Jed, our latest research, including all these conversations we're having with various stakeholders and lots of different enterprises, is like, generally speaking, nobody is really ready for this deployment of AI yet. There's obviously varying levels of readiness. There are obviously one or two organizations that are always going to be bleeding edge and are probably more than ready. But for the vast majority of us, what does it mean to get ready for the deployment of AI at work? So that's what we're going to examine today in the context of governance of our AI readiness. And we're going to do it in this historical context, because hopefully that will be entertaining for you all. But before we get going, Prem is going to run a poll for us.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. My name is Prem from Microsft team, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today for this exciting webinar on Copilot. Before we dive into the details, let's take a quick poll, as Jed said, to get a sense of where everyone stands. So the question, as you can see on the screen right now, what is the biggest worry when it comes to AI governance? We have a few options. What the AI can access and process, how our permissions are set up, and whether our people are ready to use it. Is our data clean, organized, and secure? Do I really have to dress like Jed to use Copilot or AI? So Jed, I know you gave a little bit of brief about the outfit that you are having today. Can you give me like 1 to 2 sentences about like what's the outfit about?
Oh, I'm not wearing full plate armor today because, as we'll see, you need a squire to help you get into that. You need your medieval co-pilot to help you. But lots of chainmail to keep me protected from the bad guys.
True, true. Awesome. So thank you so much, Ed, for that. And we have really good stats here. Looks like, the question is our data clean, organized, and secure? So
Yes.
thank you so much, everyone.
Loving this. Keep them there for a second so I can just have another quick glance. So what can AI access and process? So how you secure the data, 24%. How permissions are set up, specifically 8%. Whether our people are ready to use it, 14%. And the vast majority, 43%, is our data clean, organized, and secure? Well, that's great because we have got some slides where we're going to address that very issue.
Awesome.
Thanks, Prem.
Thank you.
Awesome. So, what are we going to talk about in the context of the poll we've just done today? Right. So, we are going to look at understanding Copilot's role so that we get the overall context, but then the governance, best practices, and hopefully for those 40-something% people, we're going to hit the nail on the head here with data management strategies. The stuff that you give your AIs to work with is super important. And by the way, stuff, that's a medieval technical term. So that's what we're going to look at today. Let us begin. So we'll stick with our medieval theme, or else there's no point in me whatsoever getting dressed up. Understanding Copilot's role. Well, like a medieval knight, you need a squire, right? And a Copilot is basically your personal AI-powered digital assistant. So it is your modern day squire. So it's there to help you. It's here to help you get things done. It's there to help you with tasks that are repetitive and easy to automate. But the bottom line is it's there to improve your productivity. It's not there to replace you. Like a squire, your co-pilot should be considered your trusty helper. However, there are things that there are tasks for which only the knight themselves is trained, or at least fully equipped to take on. So, we don't put the unarmed squires in the front row of a battle. That's what the knight is for. And it's the same with using AI. There is still plenty of things where the human intelligence is going to be required, but the AI is there to help us. So when we were putting this presentation together, I thought, you know what? We're talking about AI. Let's dive into Copilot Designer and use DALL-E, which powers it, to generate some images, some medieval-esque images to go with all our slides. And as you can see, they're not bad. Oh, this is the first, and you'll see the rest. The interesting thing is, if you've used AI image generation in the last year or so, or paid any attention to it in the press, you will know that AI has problems, as do many human artists, by the way, but AI has a real problem with hands. And you could often tell that an AI generated image was AI generated because the people would have too many fingers, or not enough fingers, or an extra hand growing out of their wrist or something. So you can see as we go through the slides, these images are pretty good because that's the pace of improvement that we're getting from AI. Now, when I tell you that it's not yet ready to replace humans, I will tell you, however good this image is, that helmet never existed in history, nor anything like it. Maybe Game of Thrones, but not in reality. So there's still a room for us humans to develop our expertise and apply our knowledge too. So, governance. Why does it matter? Well, just like we expected our medieval lords to govern justly and look after their realm, we have to apply some governance to our AI-powered squires. AI governance has many facets to it, but at the most basic level, our co-pilots need good quality data to work on, and we're going to address that as we move on. And they need good quality data so that we do not end up with what basically can be described as garbage in equals garbage out. So that's a key element. But also security and privacy of our organization's data are key concerns. We don't want our AI-powered squires absconding from the castle with our crown jewels. And this came up in conversations at the AIM conference a couple of weeks ago that Eric mentioned. Lots of discussions about this. Lots of people who don't seem to be fully aware of the governance that you can put in place or where the boundaries are set. And so they do worry and get concerned about security and privacy. So we'll address that today as well as we dive in. So we have started with this theme, and the title of this session has castle in it. So here's a castle for you. Anybody who knows anything about medieval castles, or even if they've just watched fantasy shows on TV or read fantasy books, you probably know castles are all about boundaries, really, right? We've got this giant, great big outer wall. And in this case, we've got a big moat as well to keep the bad guys out. Well, in the AI terms, and certainly in Microsoft AI terms, we can consider that to be the Microsoft service boundary. It's the big wall. Nothing leaves that service boundary. But again, if you know anything about castles or have read anything, you might know that normally, or at least in many designs of castles, there is an inner sanctum, a citadel, often called a keep. That's this area with the red line around it there. That's super defensive. It has its own big gates and its own defensive measures and thick walls, because if somebody breaches your outer defenses and gets in, you fall back to the keep and batten down in there. In this case, we can consider that to be our Microsoft M365 tenant for our own organization. So that's another boundary. All right, I know we're trying to draw a picture in historical context, but are you ready? We're going to come up to the date and into the future now with an actual Microsoft diagram. It's a little bit easier to talk about it in this context. So we can see that dotted line around everything is the Microsoft service boundary. The AI is within the service boundary. Your data down here is in the keep. That is in your Microsoft graph, which is in your tenant. And those boundaries are key. So when your data is being processed by the large language models behind Copilot, it's never leaving the Microsoft service boundary. So for instance, somebody asked me the other week at the conference, oh, well, does that mean my data is being sent out to OpenAI because I've read that Microsoft uses the OpenAI models? Absolutely not. No, you're within the Microsoft service boundaries. So when we look at this diagram, and it's probably a little clearer than the castle example, we're depicting that service boundary. We've got the components that constitute M365 Copilot in this case, that deal with orchestrating the prompts or queries and with processing them through the large language model. And at the bottom, there's the keep, which is our tenant. This is the good quality data that lives in our graph. That's our stuff that's being processed. And we're going to talk about why that needs to be of very good quality. And that's what used when we, what Microsoft calls grounding your queries. And that uses something called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, which you may have heard of. And again, we're going to go into detail on that in a little while. But also, there's another acronym you can see on this diagram, which is RAI. And that stands for responsible AI. So you can use Bing or Microsoft or copilot.microsoft.com for the freely available web searching version of Copilot, and put in Microsoft Responsible AI, and you'll get taken to the site where they provide lots of resources and details on what they're doing for responsible use of AI. So, a knight on his horse. Well, what's this got to do with governance and best practices? I shall explain. So if we're going to discover the art of setting up a Copilot as our cherished castle, we're going to guide you through some of the essential governance principles, specifically for tailoring this towards our AI companion. From access management through to ethical guardrails, we're going to learn how to create an environment where Copilot can thrive whilst aligning with your organization's vision, especially around security and privacy, etc. So to do that, first, let's think about this knight on his horse. So there is no one specific thing that made the medieval knight such a formidable weapon system. And notice that I use the modern terminology and say a weapon system. Well, the knight on his horse is in effect what we would call these days a system of systems. The horse itself, we have to think about its ability, its breeding. Medieval war horses cost an absolute fortune, both to acquire and to keep, because of their breeding and the amount they ate. It has to be trained. A war horse isn't a war horse unless it's trained to do certain things. And in this case, we look at this horse and it's even got its own armor and protection. many things to take into account. Add the knight on his back, it's the same. Does this individual have aptitude for his role? Or does he rely on extensive training? I mean, these people used to start when they were about 7 or 8 years old, although they could be expected to be in battle at the age of 16. If this was a 16-year-old going into his first fight, he's obviously not going to have an awful lot of experience. So there's, again, many facets. Think about his armor, you think about only protection, but I can assure you armor also, impacts the way you can move and your mobility. So when we're thinking of governance, we're thinking of systems, just like the knight on his horse there. So let's consider this specifically in the context of AI. And this is yet something else I have borrowed from the AIM conference a couple of weeks ago. So there's a wonderful industry analyst. When we looked at that quote from the beginning of the webinar from Alan Pell-Sharp, his co-author for the book on AI was a gentleman called Kashif Kompella. And Kashif brought this idea of 5 sets to the conference. And I really like this. So the first set we need to think about, chipsets. Actually, we don't need to think about that too much. Whether it's NVIDIA's strategic relationship with Microsoft and the special chipsets NVIDIA is creating for AI processing, or any other vendor and any other chipset. I mean, basically, Microsoft in this case has this all in hand. They build the data centers that runs the algorithms, so we don't really need to worry about the chipsets. But next up is the tool sets, and in this case, the tools are the AI algorithms themselves. So, for instance, out of the box, you probably know this, Microsoft works very closely with OpenAI. So out of the box, M365 Copilot is basically GPT. And as it gets updated, currently we're on GPT-4. And as that gets updated, Microsoft will tailor a version and it will move up the versioning and keep up to date with the latest advances. But Microsoft also offers you the abilities through Copilot Studio to build systems that use other models. So you can build your own copilots that use either commercially available algorithms and models from other vendors, or even open source models. So the tool sets are there for us. We've got a really good one that works really well out of the box, but there's flexibility there for us to research other models and potentially use different models tailored to do very specific jobs within our organizations. So next up is the important one. Not that they're all not important, but this is the one that was important to 44% of the poll responses, and that's our data sets. So we're back to garbage in equals garbage out, and considering the quality of the data and information that we pass to the AI for it to work on. And we're going to talk about that on upcoming slides. Next is skill sets. So this is an interesting one. So this is the ability of our people to use these AI tools, from understanding the art of the possible, what they can do with a particular copilot and where it can help them, through to what is called prompt engineering, which I'm sure you've all probably heard of, which is literally the way we interface with the AI and the words we use and the phrases we give it and the queries we build to lever it to its greatest extent and to get good results. So skill sets, a broad topic, not one we're going to dive into in great depth today, but we may well do in the future. And there is plenty of resources out there. And certainly Microsoft has the Copilot Labs, which is a great set of resources when you're thinking about prompt engineering and the best way to use the copilots. And then finally, for this one, we have mindsets. So our organizational culture and the role it plays in the use of all technologies, but specifically how that's going to be impacted by the use of AI. So the 5 sets, I find this a useful model. I hope you do too. But some things never change, the basics. So not only do I put all this stuff on just for the sake of dressing up for our marketing department, but I actually have full plate armor and steel weapons, and we fight each other. And we don't just make stuff up to look good for the public. We use a book that was published by an Italian knight in 1409. There's 4 versions of this book that still exist today, or manuscript. But the interesting thing in the context of our discussion today is Fiore starts the book with, "Don't come to me looking for basics." He's basically saying, if you've opened this manuscript, I expect you to know your footwork. I expect you to know one end of a sword from another. In the words of Arya Stark, you stick them with the pointy end. He expects you to know and understand the basics. And in his manuscript, he's going to teach you good practices. He's going to teach you advanced techniques and good practices to help you survive and win the fight. That's not a million miles away from where we are now. All right. So AI is another reason for us to focus on some of those basics. So whether it's Microsoft or whether it's industry bodies like AIM, we've mentioned the conference numerous times now. AIM is the Association for Intelligent Information Management, or whether it's ARMA, which is the Association of Records Managers of America, and many other organizations in the information management, data governance space have been saying the same thing for decades now, that there are many, many good reasons to focus on your data and its quality and its structure and its organization. And now AI has just brought that back into focus for us again and gives us another reason to focus on those basics. Because, again, repeating the message over and over so that we understand it, even with the very clever AI, garbage in equals garbage out. So data and information are the lifeblood of the AI, and it needs to be looked after. So just like the squire who has to scrub and polish his knight's armor, knock the dents out, keep it well oiled, we've got to look after the AI in the same way. If we feed the sophisticated and complex algorithms with really bad data, they will give us really bad answers. So there is an example from last year that probably everybody has heard of, where some lawyers in the US, or attorneys, I guess, got in trouble for using ChatGPT and asking it for legal precedents. And so there is a term we use where it comes to AI, which we say it's hallucinating. It is generative AI, so it generates a response, and sometimes it makes up a response, and it definitely presents it in a very confident manner, but the answer is actually wrong. So if you're in legal, I have no idea why you wouldn't go to legal specific AI tools that already exist. So you know that if you go to LexisNexis or Westlaw or some specific service like that, there are a lot of people curating, organizing, and quality controlling that data. So you use their AI tools. You don't just go out and use the web version of ChatGPT and say, find me some legal precedents, please. Because unfortunately, what happens is you end up in trouble with the New York State Bar, or whichever state it was. So AI, sophisticated, clever, very smart, they need our help. Even if we are grounding, as Microsoft calls it, our co-pilots in our own organizational data, then the quality of that data is going to be key. And AI benefits from as many signals as we can give it. So it needs clues to help process our content in the right context. And a lot of clues are things like file names and all the metadata we can add to content and stuff like that. So we get into the hopefully the section for those 40-something% of people, what we can do to help curate and manage good quality data to feed our AI. But first of all, let's touch on a couple of those concepts. Grounding. What is grounding? Well, our medieval alchemist in his picture there is surrounded by sources of ancient knowledge, and he's combining different spells and what have you, and trying to mix elements together and create gold from lead or what have you. When we ask Copilot a question, it's not magic happening in the background. It's large language models being applied to our data in a process that Microsoft calls grounding. So it's using data from our organization, and it means the AI can provide contextually relevant responses. And this is part of Microsoft's approach to integrating AI into our organizational data. So grounding, in effect, is using technique called RAG, which you may have heard of, Retrieval Augmented Generation. It's a technique used to enhance the output of the large language models by incorporating external data sources into the response generation process. So RAG involves two basic steps. It's the retrieval, so it's searching the knowledge bases that it's allowed to access for relevant input to the query that you've put in. And as we showed you on the diagram earlier on, in the case of Copilot, that is our M365 graph data within our tenant. And then the second part is the generation. So the LLM uses the retrieved information to generate a more accurate and contextually relevant response. So RAG is all about grounding that query in the data that is in our graph. So for example, if you're using Copilot in Microsoft 365, it can access, well, you can access it from within Word, Excel, Outlook, and PowerPoint, and it can access the data that you've generated in those applications and saved into your SharePoint sites and your OneDrive or within your M365 graph. The AI then uses that data to come up with the answers that are relevant to you based on your organization's content. And this is where we get back to talking about the security and governance aspects, because by doing this, or the way we do this, we are respecting the organization's privacy, security, and compliance boundaries. We make sure that the data retrieved and the results stay within the M365 service boundary. And it's a good way to personalize that AI experience and make it useful whilst still ensuring everything is secure and privacy is taken into account. So our medieval scribe here, one of the first ever knowledge workers, perhaps. He's scribbling down his lord's taxes, or maybe an inventory of his lord's possessions. And I mentioned a couple of slides back that we study a book that was written in 1409. If you consider all the books that have been printed since Gutenberg invented the printing press, and then consider the massive exponential growth of digital data, you'd be surprised, maybe, or maybe you wouldn't, because maybe you keep up with this, with the amazing exponential growth. So various analysts tell us we're going to hit 180 zettabytes worldwide by 2025, a zettabyte being a million petabytes. Yes, a million petabytes times 180. But what's amazing when you consider how many hundreds of years ago Gutenberg invented the press and how many hundreds of years we've been printing books and things like that, the vast majority of that 180 zettabytes will be digital data that was created in the last 5 years. I personally blame all you TikTok creators and Instagram people, but yes, a lot of that data is also organizational enterprise data that we're creating, and it just keeps going up. And generative AI is going to increase the amount of data. It's not going to do anything to make it less. It's going to make it easier to create content. So what can you do to help you? Well, if you look at the Microsoft data governance recommendations for Copilot, this is what I was talking about earlier. A lot of this stuff is things that we have been talking about for decades within certain industry bodies. And some organizations have been doing a good job of this, some maybe not so much, but now we've got another reason to focus on these basics. Organizing your data. So IA is still important in the world of AI. So information architecture is still important in the world of artificial intelligence. Organizing your data can take many forms, including the structures of your storage, like document libraries and folders, and it provides a starting point for security and setting permissions and many other elements of compliance as well. So organizing your data. Tagging your data. Anyone who knows me, anyone who's ever met me at a conference or seen me on a webinar knows that I'm a metadata nerd as well. And I'm always going to say the more metadata, the better. Metadata helps your data quality because it's providing the AI with many good signals to help it process. So lots of good quality metadata. But also standardize things like naming conventions for files, where files get stored, standardizing that metadata we just mentioned. Standards can help by giving the AI good clues as well. Version control. So you could end up in a situation where an older version is still available to users and to your Copilot. And so an answer is generated based on an older version of a document rather than the latest and greatest. So version control. And overall, good practices, like ensuring our people are aware of good practice and how they can help curate the data and information, and how they individually can help with data quality. So governance best practices. I'm going to have to take another slurp. Building your fortress to protect your data. So Microsoft 365 Copilot AI governance is basically an extension of Microsoft 365 governance. It's the same for other flavors of Copilots. If you're looking at the governance of your data in Dynamics or in Dataverse under your Biz apps, it's the same thing. It's an extension of existing plans. So create and update those plans. Make sure you have them. Make the plan accessible to the rest of the organization. Put it on the internet somewhere easy to find. Make sure it's readable and not full of jargon that your average end user won't be able to understand. So make it readable, usable by them. And provide training around governance decisions, especially when you're thinking of onboarding your users and starting to use Copilot. So to help us with all this, Microsoft have developed an AI Center of Excellence, which is a bunch of clever people developing guardrails and processes and policies and procedures internally at Microsoft, which are very helpful and useful to guide us in the use of Microsoft's AI products. What you can see on screen are some of the things that are involved within the governance, strategy, architecture, roadmap, and culture. But you see the little QR code there. If you grab the QR code using a camera on your cell phone or screenshot this for later, it will take you straight to that Microsoft AI Center of Excellence site, and you can dive into the awesome content that's there. So I'm just going to leave that there a second so you can flash the QR code. Alrighty. So strengthening our security. We have a depiction here of guys on a city wall or a castle wall, and they've got battlements and big thick stone walls to hide behind. And as we said earlier on, we should think of everything in terms of systems. There's no one security enhancement or compliance product that will help us. We should think of things as a system. In the historical allegory, we looked at the picture of a castle earlier on. It's a system. It's got high walls, it's got battlements, it's got moats, it's got drawbridges. And this is the same in our IT world, and it's definitely the same when we think about securing our data and compliance issues for the AI. And yay, comes to the rescue is Microsoft Purview. So Copilot uses existing controls that are in place to ensure your data stored in your tenant is never returned to the user or used in a large language model if the user doesn't have access to that data in the first place. So you may be used to this when we're talking about enterprise search. So search results, you won't get search results. It won't show you a document if you don't have the permissions to access that document. And it's the same with copilots. But also, when a piece of content or all your data has sensitivity labels applied, that's an extra layer of protection. So when a file is opened in Word or Excel or PowerPoint or a calendar or event in Outlook, the sensitivity data is displayed in the app, and you can see the label name and you can see the content markings in headers and footers and things like that. That's sensitivity labels. And so you can make sure that Copilot understands the sensitivity labels, and it won't deliver anything depending on how you label it and what you consider to be sensitive, and it won't return that to the LLM. So this protection extends to data stored outside of the 365 tenant too, if it's open in an Office app, for example, in local storage or cloud storage. So Purview brings so many extra tools to help you secure and remain compliant. And so I'm not going to put them up on screen, but we'll list a few of them. We've mentioned sensitivity labels. Purview helps you encrypt data with Purview information protection. We've got data classification. We've got customer encryption key management, communications compliance, amazing audit trails, e-discovery capabilities, and of course records management with retention policies and automatic retention and deletion and things like that. So you've got the standard tools available to you and your organization's security and policies and procedures. And at the basic level, you've got all your secure groups in Entra ID and your access controls and permissions. And then Purview gives you tools to take it to the next level. So, summing up, this is me in the yellow and green facing off against a lady from Chicago called Erin in the purple. And we're fighting each other in a tournament. Why did knights fight each other in tournaments? To be prepared. It was practice. And so we want to be prepared for turning on our AI. So whichever flavor of our AI-powered squire we are thinking of using, the lesson is don't just turn it on, but make sure you are prepared. So we've talked about the 5 sets, and we focused on data sets, skill sets of our people, and mindset within our organization. We've talked about good data and information management, good governance of our data. Governance practices are key to providing good quality content for the AI to process, right? We're back to that lovely saying, garbage in, garbage out. We want to prevent that from happening. So to do that, we clean up our data, we get rid of the redundant, obsolete, and trivial content where we can. We archive, we clean up as a first step, and then we move into organizing our data. We mentioned our document libraries, the way we put stuff in OneDrive, other repositories. So we organize our data. We tag everything with as much metadata as we possibly can. And we understand and acknowledge that people don't like manually adding metadata. So actually, we can use AI to help us get ready for AI. So we can use SharePoint Premium to automatically create metadata for us. So there you go, virtuous circle of AI. We can standardize file names and folder naming conventions and lots of other good things, and we must take a sprawl of versions into account and think about version control. And then we promote these good practices to our people so that they understand their role in organizing and curating our data. Remember to consider the security and privacy, not just in terms of the service and tenant boundaries that we've shown in the diagrams, but also in terms of what data you want to be made available to Copilot, and the fact that just like good search, Copilot can end up shining a spotlight on data with badly configured permissions. You can put in a search into enterprise search, into a SharePoint search engine, and it can show you data that you didn't think you were going to get because the permissions haven't been well managed, and Copilot will do the same thing. It won't return data as part of its answers if it's been well secured. And so to be prepared, we've got that picture again of our boundaries. Think of the red outer layer as the Microsoft service boundary. Our tenant is the internal boundary around our keep. And Microsoft does its part to help keep our data and information safe and secure, but we must do our part too. So I think the timing hasn't been terrible, and we have some time left for questions. And so let me go and see if I can bring up the questions. I think there are a lot that Eric has been doing.
There were quite a lot.
Job of answering.
Yeah, there were quite a lot that were good. One of the ones that I thought you could hit on is really it's at the beginning, but sort of throughout. It's about trust. It was raised that it was one of the first. Wasn't our poll question was trust as being a hindrance, and I would really like to hear your thought about trusting Microsoft with how we're using Copilot with our data. You did talk about it though, but also, do you happen to know if you have a personal Copilot account and does Microsoft use your prompts to retrain the model? I believe they do not do it for Copilot for Microsoft 365 or Tenant. But what about just like a personal account?
Nope, not even on the personal accounts. As far as I'm aware, they have stated publicly that they don't use your prompts to help train the model. That's what OpenAI does. OpenAI trains GPT on enormous data sets. We see a lot in the news about what gets included in those data sets and whether they should be allowed to trawl Reddit and places like that and Wikipedia and what have you. So those large language model data sets are taken as they exist, and it's not being trained further on our prompts. On the subject of trust, that's why we have the Microsoft site with all the resources for responsible AI. That's why we have the Center of Excellence, where you hopefully zapped the QR code. Microsoft as a vendor are acutely aware of the potential trust issues when you're using tools as powerful as this. And so, from top down, they'll help you and show you all the resources that hopefully builds your trust in their system. And then they give us the resources to help us secure our own content as well. So I think it's, trust at multiple levels. And hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so.
Alrighty. Cool. Thank you, Sir Eric.
All right, so some new ones came in. We have resistance in our organization from certain areas. They're concerned that our data will be made public eventually. They asked, how can we trust that Microsoft is in fact protecting our data? Similar question.
Yeah, same. I
Fair
think
question, Paul. I won't disagree, but
yeah,
what do you have to
I
say?
mean, I would give the same answer to that one. There is lots there that Microsoft pledge publicly, and they provide all the resources for you to go and look to check that stuff out. If you are still concerned after reading it and checking it out, and maybe getting your corporate legal department to look at it, then that's fair enough. Not every organization is going to look at this in the same way.
Yeah, I got my kind of take on it, which is, I mean, you can never guarantee anything. It's a contract. Could they break the contract? Of course they could. I look at history though. Microsoft does not make their money on this type of data the way that other organizations such as large search engines might do. They have a lot to lose, and we're talking like hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars of valuation if they were to break that trust. That's not to
Yes.
say that they aren't hacked. That's a very different thing. And Azure, as well as Google, as well as AWS, these are huge targets for state actors to get into your data. I believe Microsoft is acutely aware of this, and they're spending billions of dollars to protect our data, which is kind of different than using our data in ways they didn't say. So, in
Yeah.
knowing people at Microsoft up to the president level, I believe they take it extremely serious, and
Yep.
they know that if they break trust once, they will not get it back, and that's a massive problem, and it will hit them at the pocketbook in numbers we cannot comprehend. There's lots of zeros.
Very true. But I like your point. It's a contract, and knowing people in Microsoft legal, those contracts don't get written unless everybody has put in the billions of hours of work to make sure that things are safe and secure. So yeah, I think that's a good point. All right, I think.
No, there's another good question that came in. We
We
still
got
have a few
one.
minutes. We got 5 minutes. Okay, so I'm assuming that this is from Len. I'm assuming that the tools that are being given for modification and governance have the capacity to be incredibly complex. Complexity here is the word here. Are there any skills that are going to be suddenly become vital to manage them? So like programming or multilingual fluency because of the complexity of modification and governance.
So that's a really interesting one, especially where you talk about programming language and multilingual fluency, because one of the things that AI can help you with is translation. And strangely enough, because of the advent of Copilot in GitHub and other AI tools similar to Copilot, English is apparently now the most widely used programming language across the planet. So strangely, the AI tools can actually help you with that. And also, we haven't touched on it in the presentation today, but Microsoft is embedding AI capabilities into Purview, into other data management and security tools as well. So they're trying to use the tools to stay ahead of the bad guys. Don't forget, hackers also have access to AI-powered tools these days. Script kiddies have been upgraded because they can just, copy and paste a vulnerability into ChatGPT and say, write me some code. So yes, a double-edged sword there, haha, to stick with the historical metaphor. But AI can help you protect as well.
My quick one before I know we got to wrap up. Prem will do that for us around modification and governance is, I think one big skill is the lifelong learner because things are going to keep changing. So you're going to want to enjoy the fact of trying to stay in the know of how Microsoft has been building the governance tools around SharePoint, around your tenant, around, we've got new things out there. It's called SAM. Like there's all these new tools that will be coming out to help do it. But you have to enjoy wanting to learn that sort of stuff, understanding data architecture within SharePoint, which is it's not rocket science. It's not the hardest thing to do. So I think we're running out of time though. So
Yeah,
should we wrap this up?
I think we probably should.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Again, thank you for attending today's webinar, and a big thank you to Jed for delivering an exciting section. Your feedback is valuable to us as it helps us improve our webinar and create content that meets your needs. To access the survey, simply scan the code on the right side of the screen. Your participation is directly contributes to the quality of our webinar, and you also have a chance to win $50 Amazon gift card. Once again, we appreciate your participation on today's webinar. Keep an eye out on your inbox for the recordings of today's session and slides and all the handout resources. With that being said, I'll hand it over back to Jed, and we look forward to seeing you on the next month's webinar.
Yep. Don't forget, everybody, CreaSpark is here to help you slay your AI dragons, to help you build your castle, and to secure your data and content, and we'll fight those beasties for you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.